Hello everyone, welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. In this one, we'll be taking a look at the brand new Elemental Wizard, well, one of the brand new Elemental Wizards from Rosetta, Oscilio Constella Intelligence. Oscilio right now has two different builds, a no pitch build, which will be the one we are showing inside of this video, as well as a build that actually plans on pitching cards. Right now, I am working on a sort of a hybrid build that can switch between the faster no pitch version and the pitch version, the blue pitch version. But for this video, we will be going over the no pitch version, talking about the ins and outs, what you want to be on. I think this is like a pretty close list to what most no pitch Oscilios are. We'll talk about the sideboard, some other stuff, just like we did in the Florian video. But with that said, let's just get into the video. Oscilio is a 36 health, 4 intellect elemental wizard hero. He gets to play lightning cards since he has the essence of lightning. He has a very simple ability of a once per turn instant to discard an instant to draw a card. The use for this ability is insanely powerful, letting you get rid of instants that wouldn't usually work with hands, say a somersault in a two sigil spell hand, or getting rid of something like a high voltage in a full attack hand, or even just cycling through your deck to find your important sigils, your Sigil of Brilliance mainly, or find other combo pieces like Gone in a Flash. Oscilio's ability is incredibly powerful in letting you get those pieces and just letting you dig through your deck. Even though he has all this card draw, Oscilio is very hard to fatigue just because he can have all of the things to leak through damage, and the way his character and mainly his weapon work just let him leak through so much damage. It's incredibly powerful. And honestly, he's very fun to play. I've been definitely playing Oscilio the most out of all of the new Rosetta heroes. So, one of the best. Not very good, I will say, but one of the best fun-wise out there. The main reason that Oscilio is so fun is because of his weapon, Volzar the Lightning Rod. This is a lightning wizard weapon. It's a two-handed staff. It has two effects. The first one says, if you control an aura permanent with sigil in its name, this costs 1 less to activate, and it normally costs 1. So if you have a sigil, it's pretty much just free. It is a once per turn instant for 1 resource, so free if you control a sigil, to amp X, where X is the number of lightning cards you've played this turn. Amp is a new mechanic, not from Rosetta, but we've only had one card prior to Rosetta with it in Kindle, that increases the damage of the next time you would deal arcane this turn. So, mainly, you will activate it once you've played all of your lightning cards, and then play a burn spell like Etchings of Arcana. The notable thing about Volzar is that it pretty much just says every lightning card you play in a turn gets 1 extra damage. Either it be in another attack or an instant, you're going to get 1 free damage as long as you end your turn in at least 1 source of arcane, which is incredibly powerful. Out of the gate, this is pretty much just giving you an art of... If you think about it like this, it's pretty much just giving you an Art of War every turn you end in a burn spell. And even better than Art of War, because it's triggering on instance too. It's 1 bonus damage on your instance. You're trading that off for not having a weapon to swing with, but really, the only other weapon in the game that Oscilio might have been able to use is Aurora's Starfall. There's not really any other weapon that fits extremely well with this kit, so Volzar the Lightning Rod is just an insanely powerful tool that he just gets access to. Looking at the rest of the equipment, Flash of Brilliance is one of the best heads in the set. Similar to how Zen could abuse the Stride of Reprisal, Oscilio gets to abuse the Flash of Brilliance. Where there are different headpieces, you will play Flash of Brilliance. You'll swap Flash of Brilliance for in some matchups we will talk about. Flash of Brilliance in itself is just discard a lightning card that wouldn't work in your hand to get something else. The main 3 sigils in the deck, which matter for, it's any aura, but you're really never picking up Channel Lightning Valley. The main things that you're going to be picking up with Flash of Brilliance are your sigils. There's 3 in the deck. We'll go over them now. We'll talk about them a little more when we go over the actual deck itself. Sigil of Conductivity and Sigil of Lightning both create an embodiment of lightning token when they leave play. Sigil of Lightning destroys itself at the beginning of your action phase, but Conductivity only can be destroyed if you are dealt arcane damage, which will only happen in some matchups. Other times it'll just sit out and make your Volzar free the whole game. Obviously with these you can get Go Again if you really need it on a hand that is like, I don't know, 3 Lightning Surges. You can discard one, play something else, arsenal the other. Or just like fixing bad hands like that. That's what you'll pick up one of these for. But mainly you'll use it to pick up a Sigil of Brilliance. This is the Oscilio spec. We'll talk about it more. But it pretty much, when it leaves play, you draw a card. Which means if you pick it up to the Flash of Brilliance, it not only goes in your hand to play it later, because they're all instants, and they're all lightning by the way, so they all count for your Volzar. But since some of them destroy themselves at the start of your turn, you can save it for next turn if you don't need the trigger right away, especially these ones because you don't need to stack the embodiments. You can just save the sigil to be a lightning and a sigil for your Volzar, so you make it free and uptick it by 1. And if Sigil of Brilliance was the sigil you picked up, the card you discarded just replaces itself. So you can use it sort of like a pseudo Oscilio ability on any lightning card in your hand, and we play a lot of them. So just that cycle factor is insanely powerful. Like I said, there are some helmets we can swap it for. I will talk about them when we go over the sideboard. But this will be your helmet most of the time. Final Spring Tunic is sort of just the best chest for Oscilio. Sometimes you will play like a Blossom of Springs, but most of the time you will just play Final Spring Tunic into your mid-range and your control matchups. This is just the best option. Any game that's going to go later than like 6 turns, 5 turns, you'll want Tunic. Sometimes even like 4 turns, you'll want Tunic. As long as you can get at least 1 resource off it, it's better than Blossom of String, but sometimes you just want that speed. Especially in a version like this, because we go pretty fast. But everyone should know what Tunic does. I'm not really going to read it here. Although there are replacements, like I said. You could just, if you don't own a Tunic, you can play Blossom of Spring. Thankfully, Oscilio's deck is pretty free-to-play friendly. This is the one video that I won't have to tell you guys any CNC replacements, because there's no CNCs in the deck. The only things that are going to be expensive are the equipment, which are from the new set. You don't need Tunic, so Tunic will be expensive, but the 2 other equipment we're going to go over, and like current funnel and gun flash and channel. So like 3 Ms that are from the new set and 2 equipment that are from the new set, which is incredibly good for this deck because it's very free to play friendly if you're a new player, and it's a really fun deck, so new players definitely like this one. Moving on to the next equipment, we have the Oscilio equipment, Aether Bindings of the Third Age. This glove is kind of mid, but it's pretty good in Oscilio. I would still play it, even though I just called it mid. It is a 1-block Battle Worn, which is good. Wizard doesn't have that. Puts Oscilio's health at 30. Mainly, you'll be like 38 to 40 health consistently. Aether Bindings of the Third Age has that 1-block Battle Worn, but it's mainly used for its instant effect to destroy it and make it so at the end of your turn, or until the end of your turn, whenever an aura permanent you control with Sigil in its name leaves the arena, you amp 1. This is important to note because if you stack up a bunch of your Sigil of Brilliance and Lightnings, this will give you multiple amp, as well as if you take a turn where you're bouncing them back with something like Blast to Oblivion, that can trigger it as well. This glove on average is going to give you 2 amp on a turn, which means it's a 3-value glove, which is better than expected in a lot of situations, having a 3-value glove. Sometimes it's a 2-value glove because you'll use it for 1 amp, but even then, if you can use it to end a game, that's still good. Sometimes it can be a 4 to 5-value glove in which it's absolutely insane, but it does have its upsides, its downsides. It's a good card. You should still play it. it's pretty cheap. So unless Oscilio becomes broken, there's no reason not to have it. At most, I think it's like it has to be less than $20 right now. But still, this card pretty good in Oscilio. I would not play this deck without it, although again, you'll board it out sometimes. The one equipment you will never board out is Lightning Greaves. This is the best equipment in the entire deck. Lightning Greaves also has 1 block Battle Worn. It also has Arcane Barrier 1, which is very good. This one's lightning equipment, which means Auroras are going to be looking for these, so they might be a little more up there, but I think right now they're around 40, which is really good for Legendary, as core as Lightning Greaves. The reason Lightning Greaves is so good is because they have the instant effect to pay a resource and destroy them, to make all instant cards you play this turn get go again. Which means your Gone in a Flash, the card that goes back to your hand every time you play an instant, just gets go again. Because you're playing instants every time to pick it up. And there are so many instants in this deck, you'll just gain so many action points. That's why it's here. It's here for that combo turn with the Gone in a Flash, let you play so many lightning cards, end it off with a massive burn spell. Not in addition to it having innate AB1, so the only time you'll need more protection is in case you're really scared against Rune Blade, or if you're playing against a wizard and you just have that value off the Lightning Greaves to go whenever you want. This is the reason why you play Blossom of Springs. That's the reason why you play Tunic. The entire reason is so you don't have to pitch a card to activate your Lightning Greaves. You can either activate your Tunic or you can pop your Blossom of Spring, because pitching card to this is a 1 less card that you could use to amp Volzar, a less card you could use to cycle Oscilio, 1 less instant to pick up Gone in a Flash, etc., etc. That's why the chests that give you a resource are so important, because you really, really need this. This is the best card in the deck. Normally, I would go over sideboard equipment. However, in the last video where I talked about sideboard stuff a lot, like I normally do, I thought it would be a better idea to go over it at the end, because I'm starting to write notes for all my deck lists so people can see sideboard stuff. Yay. So we're going to go over the main board, because this is a pretty... I think Oscilio lists aren't the strictest, but they have a fairly strict main board. Most Oscilio lists are going to be like 51 cards the same. Maybe 45 cards the same. Pretty much, there's a lot of stuff that's core that you're never playing this deck without. First, I want to start with your sigils. I want to go over them a little more in depth because we kind of skimmed over them. Sigil of Conductivity is good into arcane matchups, but why is it here in the main board at 3 in not arcane matchups? Well, because it's a sigil that stays in play. This means that our Volzar will always activate for free. Do be careful, because sometimes you actually want to pitch to Volzar in the early. So having a Sigil of Conductivity out can stop that, so you can't cycle your hand as much. But even then, it's still fine. It sits in play, makes this free, can be picked up later with like Blast to Oblivions. Sigil Lightning is an effect that gives us some go again, which is really nice if we draw a Lightning Surge, or starting with Gone in a Flash is very good. On smaller turns, if we have the embodiment, we can Gone into another instant into a burn spell, and then keep the Gone in a Flash in arsenal. Really, really good card. This one's definitely going to be at 3, as well as they're both lightning and blue in case we have to pitch them. And then Sigil of Brilliance. This one is an Oscilio spec. It's a yellow. It costs 0. They're all lightning wizard. This one's wizard. They're all lightning instants, so they count for your weapon. This one will destroy itself at the beginning of your action phase. Also, notably, these two, Lightning and Brilliance, destroy on your action phase, which means they trigger and you can respond with this. So that's how you'll get your amp off of them being destroyed. Sigil of Brilliance says, when it leaves the arena, draw a card. This is the lifeblood of the no-pitch deck. Sigil of Brilliance can help you dig through your deck so incredibly fast and get so much card advantage that if you find a Sigil of Brilliance early enough, your opponent will just not be able to win the game. Barring, you still get a brick hand because this deck does kind of play like Rune Blade sometimes. But Sigil of Brilliance is the main card that you want to be getting back with your etchings. It's a thing you want to bounce with your Flash of Brilliance. It's the card you want to find, at least at one point in a game, because that draw is oh so important. It lets you set up 5-card hands very easily, even 6-card hands. Sometimes I've had 7-card hands because of Sigil of Brilliance. Just an insanely powerful card. Drawing is so good in Oscilio, and this card just does everything. So this card, one of the most important in the deck for you to look for. We're only on the 9 sigils. I've seen Sigil of Aether in, is it Sigil of Aether? The Majestic that does an Arcane, and if it does damage, you amp one, in a lot of decks. My issue with it is it's not lightning, so it doesn't count for your actual Volzar, and it can mess up your Channel Lightning Valley. We're just going to go over the rest of the instance because I think they're just the easiest to talk about. Channel Lightning Valley is the similar to other channels card. There are 2 new channels this set. They all work the same way. They all have channel whatever element, which means at the beginning of your end phase, you put a counter on it, and then you put cards from your pitch zone on the bottom equal to the number of counters on it. They have to be the same element. So this is channel lightning, so you need lightning cards. Or you destroy it. So at the end of the first turn, you need to pitch 1, which hopefully you'll be able to do. Volzar costs 1, right? Comet, Storm, Shock costs 1. Sometimes you bring in like Glyph Overlays, they cost 1. Look to do that, at least in the early game, to keep a channel around, because this can be very similar to the Brilliance and just threaten card draw, because the main effect of the Channel Lightning Valley is the first time you do damage to an opposing hero each turn, you draw a card, which is why the Sigil of Aether can mess it up. Before the Sigil of Aether goes off, you need to play this. Then if you play this, they're going to just prevent the 1, where most of the time they might just take the 1, which shuts off Channel Lightning Valley. If you have 1, it can be tough. It also doesn't work that well with Gone in a Flash, because for Gone in a Flash to actually work, you need to play an instant in the resolution step, which means that Gone in a Flash would have already dealt damage, but you can still play the Lightning Valley as a pickup for the Gone, so it's not that bad. The main reason why this is in the deck is just because it says draw a card. It's so easy to do damage in this deck just because of how much you're threatening. You have so many breakpoints, as well as such a tall amount of arcane damage. They're going to do at least 1 damage on every turn, and even if you don't, your opponent probably can't swing back at you, and if you kept Channel in play, well then you just have a 4 to 5 card hand, or 5 to 6 card hand, near guaranteed. And even if your last damage source is a burn spell, you just get your arsenal for next turn. So it's, again, really not that bad just keeping this in play for an extra turn. It's even an instant, so if your opponent's going first, you can slap this down on their turn 1, and then just draw back up and have a super big hand. High Voltage is another lightning instant. It's very simple. It's a blue that just amps 1. This card's very good with Gone in a Flash, good with all your other burn spells. This is a card that some Oscilio lists are not on, but I think most are switching to just because it's a blue, it's an instant, it's lightning, it's more arcane damage, it's just a decent card. Blink is one of the only cards that isn't in... Well, actually, that's not true. There are a fair amount of cards that aren't from Rosetta, but this is like the chorus of cards that isn't from Rosetta. Blink is a blue instant that just gives you an action point. It's really good with Gone in a Flash because you can play the Gone, hit the Gone, pick it up with the Blink, and then have an action point to do something even if the Gone in a Flash didn't have Go Again. Or you can use it just fix bad hands. If your hand is like double Lightning Surge, this lets you play double Lightning Surge. Really good with Blast to Oblivions because it gives you the action point back again. If it doesn't have Go Again, you might struggle. Blink helps you with that. It's a very good card in Blink. Electrostatic Discharge is a 0-cost instant. We are playing the red 3 of it. It says the next action card you play this turn with cost 1 or less gets +3. The next attack action, which is every attack in the deck. So this is just a preemptive +3. You might think of this card very similar to Lightning Press, another card we have at 3. However, they are very, very different in a lot of situations. The main one, for this deck purposes, being Gone in a Flash, and technically Entwine Lightning, because you can't use a discharge. You can't pump a Entwine Lightning with a discharge and fuse it with the same discharge. But oh well. So Electrostatic Discharge is a preemptive pump. However, it is way better than Lightning Press in this deck, because of the simple thought of Gone in a Flash. You really want every instant to abuse this. We are on 3 Lightning Presses in this list, but that's because we care about our cards not pitching and doing as much damage as possible. So Discharge, extremely important. I would not play this deck without this at 3, especially if you were already at Lightning Press on 3, which we're on 3 of. I think this card's just pretty good. It helps you with Flittering Charge and Twine Lightning. It lets you get through a breakpoint for your channel. Good with your second strikes, letting you deal at least 1 damage, so you can get that online. It's just a good card. You can always discard it to Oscilio, which is the same thing said for every instant. If you get a hand with no attacks, just dump one of these, find something else. Perfectly fine. The last card that's only an instant, because we do have one card in the main board that isn't just an instant, is Electrostatic Somersault. This is again at 3 red, because it can target things that cost 0 at red. This is a 0 cost instant that says choose up to 2 attack action cards with cost 0 or more, since this is red, on the active chain link and return them to their owner's hand. Please do not choose opponent's cards with this. It does not work the way you might think it does. It is after the chain link resolves, which is after all the damage is dealt and all the go-against happen and all the hit effects. Please only target your own things. Although, you can do a lot of nice stuff with this one. This being an instant and working on either player's turn means that, 1, you can use it to just be aggressive, pick up an Entwine Lightning or a Flittering Charge that's currently active to just get another 0 for 4. So this can be a 0 for 4 and give these go again. Or it can be used to block. Because you can play this defensively and choose 2 of your own attack actions, if you blocked with a Gone in a Flash and every other attack in this deck blocks 2, so at max you'll do 5, but a Gone in a Flash and a Flittering Charge, you can play the Somersault and just pretty much use this as a Soul Shield, which is really good. Some lists are on E-Strike, some lists, the not 0 pitch lists are on Eclectic, so sometimes it is just a Soul Shield block 6, and it's really good because you didn't have to pitch for it. It's just a 1-card block 6 instead of a, 2-card block 6. And even then, you are giving your opponent information, but, I mean, so what? You're going to throw 20 damage back at them anyway because you just block 6 with 1 card. So, really good on Somersault. Yes, you do end up discarding it a lot because there are a lot of times where you don't have a turn that it actually works out for you. Like if your hand's like Gone in a Flash plus a burn spell and another instant already, you might as well just cycle it away. But it does have its uses. It is a very good card. The last instant in the deck is Comet Storm Shock, and the perfect transition to our arcane spells. Meld is a brand new mechanic we talked about with Arcane Seeds and Life, but Oscilio has some of the best meld cards in the entire game. Kind of. Comet Storm Shock is a 2-cost red meld spell. Shock is the lightning version of Life, and it does 1 arcane to any target. However, this one costs 2, so you're almost never using it. Sometimes it matters, but it's nice to have and not need than to need and not have, so the Shock side is great there. Comet Storm itself is just a 2 for 5 wizard action that blocks 3, which also means that this is technically an instant you can discard to Oscilio that also blocks 3. But the fact that it's just a 2 for 5 big spell is really good. Blocks well, does good damage. It's why it's in the deck. Always discardable to really anything. This Oscilio ability, Flash of Brilliance, just block with it. It's a good card. The only two other arcane sources in the deck are in the main board are yellow and red Etchings of Arcana, both at 3, and Mind Warp. I'm going to start with Mind Warp. This is a blue 3-block at yellow, or sorry, I say blue. This is a yellow 3-block. Cost 0, does 2 arcane to any target hero, and then has a surge effect, which surge I don't believe we talked about yet, so I'll say surge. Surge is if it does more damage than its base. That's what surge does. So if this does more than 2, you get this effect. If you surge Mind Warp, the person hit will shuffle their hand into their deck and draw that many cards, -1. For when this card will stay in, which is into matchups that we're not bringing Glyph Overlay, Mind Warp's an incredibly strong card. It makes opponents who don't want to block us just lose a hand that they wanted to keep and maybe get a worse hand. And no matter what, they're getting 1 less card. So it's just some disruption there. A good spell, it blocks 3. Other lists you'll see will not take this out in sideboarding, but this list does. Again, we'll talk about that. Etchings of Arcana, though, is the kind of main spell for this list to work. This list wants to abuse Sigil of Brilliance as much as possible. That's how it's designed. And Etchings of Arcana lets us do that perfectly. Etchings at red does 3, so at yellow it'll do 2. Both have a surge to return an aura with Sigil in its name from your graveyard to your hand. Sometimes you pick up a Sigil of Lightning or a Sigil of Conductivity, but it's mainly here to pick up your Sigil of Brilliance. Again, the most important card in the deck. I can't say it enough. This card is so strong. You can just arsenal the Sigil right away if you don't have an arsenal, which it's very safe to do. You can respond, I believe, everything that would stop you. I think even I believe in response to Exude Confidence, you can still play your Sigil because it's not on the combat chain yet. But that one I'm not sure about. But really everything else. CNC, you can play it in response. Plow Under, you need to do it before they decompose, but you can still do it. All the new ones, you can just still play the Sigil out. Really everything. Just arsenaling is very safe. Sometimes you'll still play it to get the draw or the go again, to see what your next hand is, but other times you'll just save it for a Sigil for your Volzar. And it's still good, and then the next turn you'll get the actual trigger off. So Etchings of Arcana is a super important burn spell. I've talked so much about all the other stuff. I want to get to the sideboard because all the attacks are very basic. So let's just run through them really, really quickly. Entwine Lightning is a card from Tales of Aria. It is a 0 for 4. This one's elemental, so it won't trigger your Volzar. You won't get an uptick of lightning, but it's a 0 for 4 go again. It's pretty good to pick up a somersault, and it's just good, decent damage. Helps trigger channels and turn on second strikes. Fluttering Charge is 0 for 4. If you play an instant this chain link, it gets go again. So pretty much just a 0 for 4 go again. Really good. Fry is a head jab. However, it doesn't block and is lightning. The old Ball Lightning stat line. Ball Lightning would be too good if it was not banned. But the stat line was fine, especially for a deck like Oscilio who just wants something like this. So Fry is pretty nice. This one definitely play at 3. I'm going to skip going and Flash for now. Lightning Surge is just a good arsenal. 0 for 4 played from arsenal. Just another head jet, or another 0 for 4 go again that we just want in the deck. Second Strike is a 0 for 3, but it gets +1 if we dealt damage this turn. This is definitely the worst of them because a lot of the time our damage will be playing out attacks that will probably get blocked because our opponent won't want us to draw off a surprise channel and then ending with the burn spell. So this card ends up not being good versus slower decks that will try to block us, but tends to be pretty decent versus aggro matchups. The last 2 attacks in the deck are Majestics. Gone in a Flash, I've already talked about a lot. It's a 0 for 4. This one actually does block 3. Oh, I forgot, actually Current Funnel blocks 3, so you can get a 6 block with the Somersault. But Gone in a Flash, 0 for 4, 3 block. When you attack with it, the next time you play an instant card this chain link, you can return it to your hand. Notably with this, you do need to play the instant in the resolution step, unless you want to do a trick where you make their D-React not resolve, which then, if this had go again, you won't get your action point back, so you still might want to wait. The main reason for this is because in the resolution step, all your effects will still resolve because they're all trigger. Even if there's nothing triggering, you can still do something in the resolution step. So after you do your damage, because resolution steps after damage, and after you technically you can do it before the go again happens, because you'll still get your action point back as long as you're in the resolution step. You can still return it to your hand at an instant, which is the main reason why this card's so strong with something like Lightning Greaves, because you can still get your damage off and then put it in your hand. One of the just best cards in the entire deck. And then the last attack in the deck is Current Funnel. This is the last blue. It's a 0 cost, 2 power, 3 block. It's lightning. And it says, if the last action card you played this turn, so yes, you can't do it off an instant. It has to be a lightning attack for this deck. This and the next action you play get go again. Notably, next action, which means you can start giving your burn spells go again, which is really cool. But it's here to have longer turns. A lot of the time you're blocking with it or you're pitching it, but this card will just be here in case you need it. Realistically, one of the better cards in the deck. It blocks 3, it's lightning, it's blue. It does everything. Not the most damage, but it's a good bridge as well. It just does stuff. It gets stuff done. Current Funnel is just that card. Not the most key card, but still a pretty good one. With all of that, that is the main board. I'm sorry if this one was long. There's just a lot of stuff to say about Oscilio, and I'm glad this is one of the decks I really know, because we'd be here for even longer if I didn't. But with all that, let's get started straight away with the inventory. For the inventory, I will start with the equipment. We'll try to run by this really fast because I had to re-record this. Blossom Springs is here for Agro Matchups, mainly ones where you go second. You can play this going first in Agro Matchups. I prefer to play it only going second because you can get the Tunic off pretty reliably. It only matters if you want to go turn 2 and you don't have Tunic up, like your turn 2 going first and you don't have Tunic up. But that won't happen very often. It will sometimes. You can do whatever you'd like. I just personally prefer Blossom on going second only. Shock Charmers are here just for wizards. If you want, you can play Metacarpus nodes instead. However, I would only play nodes into Kano, not just wizards in general. I would play Shock Charmers into most other wizards. Definitely Oscilio, possibly Verdance, but that one's up to you. Spell Void 2 is just good into anything that's doing a high amount of arcane, like Oscilio, like Kano. Very good card. Norrin Hood is really just for Kano. You can bring this in versus matchups where you want AB post your combo, but after your combo, you should hopefully win the game in the next few turns anyway. So you don't really need it there. Again, just for Kano, so you get that AB2. With Metacarpus nodes, it can be AB3 into Kano, but again, you're probably not playing nodes. I'd rather just play Shock Charmers. Crown of Providence is here for Disruption. I do put in the notes that you can play Balance of Justice over Crown of Providence, and it is probably better just because this version of the list, the zero pitch version, is a lot weaker against Disruption than something like the more higher pitch version, because they play more 3 blocks. Crown of Providence might be better than Balance because of that factor. This deck only has 5 tech card slots because the Blast of Oblivion and the Glyph Overlay are for something else. This list uses them on 2 Scour and 3 Snag. If you wanted, you could go down the Crown of Providence or the Blossom Spring to get that 3rd extra thing on your tech slot to go to 6, but you don't really need it since Scour isn't a card you really need 3 of. For this list, for instance, you could play cards like Warmongers, which can hurt you sometimes, so do be careful with it, or you could play Poison the Well in either of these slots, but I have Snag and Scour here for these reasons. Snag is really good to new because it sets everything down to 1 most of the time, which your 2 Battle-Worn equipment can just block out, making Snag a really good anti-disruption tool versus new, as well as the fact that this is an instant, which means if you don't want to take cards out for it, you can just put it in and discard them when you don't need them, or just dig for them because you are Oscilio. If you did want to take a card out, though, you can take out the current funnels because they're okay into that matchup, but they're not like amazing into that matchup. Or you can take out the blinks if you want to stop them from getting action points. I would do blinks into new, but you could do like a split of a blink, a funnel, and just add a snag. That's perfectly fine as well. Fully up to you. Or even, honestly, I could go down one Sigil of Conductivity and just play 2 of that funnel and blink if you wanted to just play 60, because she can use this against you if she does get her ability off. But Snag's mainly just for new. And then 2 Scour for Rune Blade for Enigma. Just destroy their rune chance, destroy their shields. Only bring in Scour versus decks that really care about their rune chance. If you know they're on OTK Viz, Scour is good. If they're on aggro, I tend to not care. But it's also good against Vinsa if they're trying to stack some rune chance on you, or pretty good into Florian. Whenever you want to bring Scour in, you can go down just 2 current funnel, and it works out perfectly fine. Or again, 1 blink, 1 funnel, if you really care about those current funnels. The last 2 cards on the board, Blast to Oblivion, Glyph Overlay, these are just swaps. It's more notable in the notes, but I'll run through some quick reasons for the swaps and what card to swap. Whenever you want to bring in Blast of Oblivion, you should bring out Second Strike. This will be against matchups where it's very hard to turn on the Second Strike because they're going to be decks that are going to be blocking you a lot more. Blast of Oblivion getting its upside of the Sigil bounce things help you in longer games anyway to grind a little extra value, so it's just better than Second Strike in all of those situations. And then Glyph Overlay comes in over either Mind Warp or Yellow Etchings, depending on how you feel. Personally, I go down Mind Warps because I really like the Etchings. This card lets you hit a little harder versus those blocking decks, and those decks that block you more generally will give you more free turns, giving you turns to actually redraw your sigils because you unfortunately do have to shuffle them into your deck. This card's also good with Tunic, but you're only ever playing this card when you're playing Tunic and not Blossom of Spring. The last card to note is Null Shock. This is a card that I've been playing a lot inside of the more pitching versions of Oscilio, but I'm not sure if it's the perfect card for the no pitch versions of Oscilio, mainly because it costs 1. This could be another sideboard deck card if you really wanted it to. You're never playing it for the null. Really, sometimes it does matter, but you're mainly playing it for the shock component. Just that 1 cost yellow instant to do 1 arcane is a lot better than the 2 cost red that Comet Storm offers. If you want to bring in this, go down some numbers of Etchings of Arcana yellow. I wouldn't do all 3. I would do 2 at max because I want still 1 yellow Etchings for some effects. You could only go down 1 and play 1 shock if you wanted to, just as an extra instant you can discard. But it's really up to you. I haven't tested it as much in the no pitch versions, which is why it's in the maybe board over the 3 actual yellow Etchings. But again, you can make those swaps as you want. Believe I did talk about other sideboard swaps for these. Poison the Well, Warmongers, really any other good tech card you can think of. Snag and Scour could be get into. You don't need poppers really. I believe Lightning Press can act as a popper, which is pretty funny if you really wanted it to, but into the one matchup where you're actually popping, which is Prism, you can be slightly favored just because you can run them over. Their life total is lower than yours at base. And even though they are pretty defensive and can do a lot, you can also do a lot. So you can just really race them down if you get a good enough start. But with all that, again, I wanted to run through the sideboard really, really fast. The notes are here if you wanted to see them. That's going to be the end of the video. I know this was a long one. The first bit was 30 minutes. When I saw I had to re-record the second part, I wanted to just go through it as fast as possible, since the notes can explain my reasoning a little more. Actually, I don't mention balance. I will put balance with this. Oh, I do say that actually here, but I might add a little more. Whatever. That's going to be the end of the video. I hope you guys learned something. Oscilio is an incredibly fun deck from Rosetta. I'd say the most fun deck in Rosetta, just because you get to take so many game actions. The fact that you just get to dig through your deck and just play all your cards out just like a Storm deck in Magic is very, very good, especially since you always have your payoff in Volzar, although you might not have the burn spell sometimes. Not sure what deck we're going to get next week. Maybe we'll do Verdance, because we'll do an Earth Lightning, then an Earth, and then another Lightning, which means Aurora might be last. I've been also trying to... I don't want to show, like, the exact best Aurora... Like, I want to show an easy-to-understand Aurora list. I don't want to show, you know, the list that the pros play if they're not as basic. But I also don't want to show the exact list, because I like to show my lists. So I've been working on Aurora a lot. It was just so hard to find like decent swaps because the cards just feel worse and the pro lists are very basic already. So I guess that video might just be explaining a list that high-end players are playing. But we'll cross that road when we get there. For Oscilio, not many people are playing it. There are a few guys on YouTube that are playing it, which, Godspeed. This hero is not the best. But I think that once, you know, people learn it a little better, this hero could just be actually just insanely powerful. Kind of like Icelander. Icelander was strong, but once people really figured her out, she just like was insanely good. Just not many people played her. And I feel like Oscilio could be in a very similar spot where not many people play him, but he could just be extremely powerful. But with all that, that's going to be the end of the video. I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.